If you're not retired yet, we want to make work optional someday. And if you're already retired, we want to keep it that way. We want to, one of the other quotes that I love to repeat that I learned very, very early on in my career was that money is a unit of choice. And the more units we have, the more choices we have. And it's so true.
Welcome back to Elevate Your Business, a podcast where we discuss proven, transformative approaches to business growth and exit strategies. Join us as we talk to successful entrepreneurs, share new and profitable ideas, and help you grow wiser and wealthier so you can experience limitless success in both life and business. Now, here's your host, Adam Koós, business transition consultant and founder of Elevate and Exit at elevateandexit.com.
Yo, what's up, everybody? In this episode, I had the pleasure of being a guest on the Design Your Legacy podcast with Angelina Carleton, a thoughtful and passionate advocate for helping business owners think beyond just success and to start intentionally designing the legacy that they want to leave behind. We talked about what legacy really means, especially for business owners facing leadership transitions, big life changes, or just the challenge of stepping away from what they've built. We've explored the emotional side of exit planning, the power of purpose, and how money can be used as a unit of choice, which is part of one of my favorite quotes of all time, by the way. But anyway, Angelina asked all the right questions, and the conversation turned into something really powerful. So with that, enjoy this special crossover episode of Elevate Your Business with Angelina Carleton.
What if we could deliver a no BS version when it comes to designing your legacy, especially given the trust you put into others? I'd like to welcome Adam to the Design Your Legacy podcast this lovely morning. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
It is my pleasure. So you're joining today from the lovely state of Ohio in the United States.
Lovely is subjective, depends on the time of year. But yes, Columbus, Ohio, where if you don't like the weather, you just wait a few minutes.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful. Would you share a little bit about yourself personally or professionally to break the ice with the listeners? And then tell us what it's like to live the life of a fiduciary.
Sure, yeah. Let's see. I started my career in 2001, 10 days before the World Trade Center went down. So it was a really, really tough time to start in the financial world, let alone financial planning, retirement planning. I was also, again, 21 years old, trying to get three times my age to trust me with their life savings. So at a time when the market's precipitously crashing, again, not an easy task. So I started my career then and very, very quickly fell in love with the business, specifically with the idea of saving people and from bad advice, keeping them on the straight and narrow, helping them make work optional someday, whether that be, individuals who work for someone else or business owners who are looking to exit their companies at some point down the road. So, and it's, I don't know, to make a long story short, there's been ups, there's been downs. I like to call the downs tuition. It's been a lot of fun, and very kind of proud of where we are right now in terms of our company and what we've done for people over three of the biggest market crashes in U.S. history. And so here we are, I guess, 23 years later and still having fun. And I always say I haven't worked in over 2 decades.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you for that context. So let's say I were to retain you as my fiduciary. What is the lifestyle like? Do you wake up in the mornings and read the Wall Street Journal or Barron's and all the financial news to prepare for your clients? Or what is it like in your footsteps? Just out of curiosity, because I think a lot of the times we get to hear a sales pitch, but we really don't understand the depth of the due diligence that goes into the work.
Sure. Yeah, I think to answer your question directly, the life of a fiduciary is, I think, a life of a financial advisor or a financial planner or wealth manager. So if I answered that in two ways, if that's okay, I would say that the life of a financial planner or wealth advisor, it would look something like this. You get up in the morning, you're looking at your day, kind of seeing what you got ahead of you. You're checking the markets out, you're seeing what the pre-market's doing, making sure nothing crazy is going on, because generally speaking, anything that happens in one day is typically noise. So that, one of our biggest parts of our jobs for our clients being good stewards of their money is to make sure that we're not, reacting to that noise and understanding what's real and what's not, what's a problem, what's not a problem. From there, it's typically probably a mix of client meetings, face-to-face client meetings, some new clients coming on board, phone calls, no shortage of emails throughout the day. Get about 150 emails a day. It's insane. And then I would say towards the end of the day, you kind of make sure you're ready for tomorrow. Most of our planning takes place on Mondays. Oftentimes Fridays we'll be looking into next week, but no matter what, at the end of the day, you're looking to see how the market closed. You're looking at the next day to make sure that there's nothing else you have to do to tie up loose ends for tomorrow, and then you do it all over again. And it sounds like routine, but honestly, it's not. And that's one of the things I love about my career is that it's always different. In fact, I went to school to become a trauma surgeon, and one of the biggest reasons I wanted to do that was because it was going to be different every day. And I thrive off variety and pressure and routines. I have no interest at all for routines. It's just not my thing. So that's the answer to what the typical financial planner or wealth advisor does. If I change gears a little bit and said, what does the average fiduciary do? Or maybe a better question might even be, what's the difference between your stereotypical, financial advisor and a fiduciary advisor? The differences probably don't have a whole lot to do with what we do in terms of who we're meeting with or looking at the markets or things like that. I would say the biggest differences really are the fact that fiduciaries, true fiduciaries who are what are called NAPFA affiliated, so National Association of Personal Financial Advisors, fee only fiduciaries, legally cannot charge commissions. So probably the biggest no BS, authentic piece of I don't want to call it advice, but information that the public should know is that fiduciaries, true fiduciaries, are people who they made the decision at one point to look at their brokerage licenses, their insurance licenses, and say, "We're getting rid of them." And the reason for that is the reason for that is the answer to the question that we get from time to time, which is, "Okay, you're a fiduciary. But how is that upheld? How is that enforced? Is it just like put your hand on a Bible and put your hand up and say, I swear? Is it like the Hippocratic Oath? And the answer is no. The way it's enforced is that when you don't have a brokerage license, like a Series 7, 63, 24, or a life health variable annuity license, you literally don't have the ability to charge commissions. And that is the problem, or one of the biggest problems with the financial advisory, financial planning world is the conflicts of interest that arise from having a choice when you're talking to a client, when you're giving advice between something that's going to pay you a lot up front versus something that's not. And when you eliminate that conflict of interest, things change dramatically. So the life of a fiduciary, I would say, is much less stressful because you don't have the conflicts. You can sleep at night without any problem whatsoever. And you know that whether it's the end of the day, end of the week, end of the year, that you're doing what's in your client's best interest, even if that means making less money for your firm.
Yeah, thank you for shining light. I know there are distinctions in every industry, and like for instance, a lot of times people on the outside won't know that in residential real estate, the bell curve is in the spring and the summer and the fall, and then it quiets in the winter. Whereas
Right.
in commercial real estate, it all happens in the fourth quarter because companies have got budgets and some money to spend, and it's all about that December month. So it's all these little distinctions, and I think sometimes when someone's on the outside, they just don't know, and if they don't know, they can be intimidated to ask, which brings me to the second question that I wanted to talk to you about is a lot of times people wait until age 52 to start their retirement planning, or they can make presumptions or they can have preconceived notions again, because we have these ideas of what it must be like on the other side, where the grass is greener. So would you say more about what you're seeing out there regarding behavior of Americans or even just globally? I mean, are people really waiting to age 52?
I think that to define that specifically, like, what does waiting mean? Like, what are they waiting for? What are they doing? And I would say that statistic specifically relates to when do they actually put together a full blown comprehensive like retirement plan? And then unfortunately you're right, 100% right. It's 52, and it's a sad statistic. Especially when you consider the fact that time is money, and the time value of money. The earlier you start, the better off you'll be. And there's not a single client that comes in our office that doesn't at some point say to themselves or to us, we wish we would have started earlier. So I think that people start saving at some point way earlier than 52 in most cases. I think most people put, their first dollar into a 401k, 403b, deferred comp plan, whatever your retirement plan happens to be at work, at some point earlier than 52. But I think where the planning really needs to start earlier, like when they make that first contribution, and where it isn't starting is in having a plan. It's kind of like investing money in your 401k, meeting the match or putting a little bit more than your match, or even maxing out your 401k. If you're really responsible and you're good with your budget and you're maxing out your 401k, I mean, that's typically a really, really responsible thing to do. But it's still no different from starting a trip across the country without a destination in mind. You're just driving, right? You're just kind of hoping you get there and you don't even know where there is. So I think that the planning process needs to be started a whole lot earlier, and unfortunately, 52 is the average. So what I'm seeing is more of the same. Unfortunately, we're not seeing that statistic change. We're still seeing, it's like a bell curve, right? I mean, most of them are somewhere in their, you know, late 40s to early 60s that are coming to see us. And then the tails that exist, there's people that are very, very wealthy that didn't really need to plan because they did so well, but they still show up in their 70s but their goals are different. Their goals aren't really, can I retire? Because they're already retired, or will my money last? Because it's gonna last. Their questions are more, how do I get this money to the next generation or to charities or a combination of both in the most tax efficient way possible, handled by the person that I want. And then the tails exist at the other side too, where you've got your 20 somethings and 30 somethings that are getting a plan done early. And honestly, those people are going to be rock stars. And hopefully they teach their kids as well. But that's where we are right now.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think there's always those overachievers that do excel. Like when you talk about the 20s and the 30s, those self-made successes, which is interesting because about 2/3 of today's affluent are self-made. So that there is that drive and that hunger within them. But if I were to bring up society as a whole overall, and you had mentioned that we almost live in like this TikTok culture where people have the attention span of a goldfish, which is about 5 to 7 seconds. So how can we, in your perspective, shift people's psychology from that of fear and survival or instant gratification to thinking about maybe I should plan. If again, I think about that bell curve of most of the population.
I think the first answer is education. And what I
Okay.
mean by this it's doing what you're doing, right? It's making the public aware that not every office that you walk into that does what we do for a living or things like what we do is going to be filled with granite glass, 67-degree temperatures and fluorescent lights. It's not going to be a place that's intimidating with somebody that's wearing a three-piece suit and the slick back hair. And, I mean, some firms are still like that, unfortunately. But I think that the first part is getting rid of the intimidation. I think the biggest reason why people do procrastinate is because right off the bat they worry that they're not going to make it. They worry that they're too late, and so they just don't want that news, and so they just
Mhm.
wait. And then inevitably, at some point, they have to choose. They have to do something. So they have that plan, and now all of a sudden they're motivated. But that's how it works every single time. They get excited, they get motivated, they're enthusiastic. They're like, man, I wish I would have done this earlier. So I think it's removing the well, it's not a myth that offices can be intimidating and people can be intimidating, and there are lots of salespeople out there. And so I'm going to sound like a broken record probably a couple times today, but it just goes right back to making sure that if you only interview fiduciaries, true fiduciaries, then you're going to do 90% of the research for yourself right up front. You probably don't know that, but you've done it. If you only interview fiduciaries, you've done 90% of the research, and now it's just a matter of picking the right person that you can get along with and that you feel comfortable with. And the way to do that, by the way, is you go to NAPFA.org, the National Association of Personal Financial Advisors, NAPFA.org, put in your zip code, and it'll give you a list of all the fiduciaries, true fiduciaries in your area. And that's how you
Yeah,
do it.
that's wonderful. Thank you for that insight. I know you've said it's like a train that is coming. The train is going to arrive in the station, and there's no getting around that. Whether it's like the Egyptian boatman or just that train is coming. And it's interesting that thank you for speaking into that intimidation piece, because I think one of the profiles today of the typical client are women coming up, whether they're
Mhm.
inheriting money or they're marrying into money or just they're starting businesses. And yet a lot of times they're new to this money conversation because things are shifting and they're afraid to ask. They don't want to get judged. What if I ask that dumb question? What if that financial planner or that fiduciary pass judgment on me? So thank you for making your office more like a spa than a funeral home. Yeah. I wanted to bring up you've also often talked about this idea of like good advice and bad advice. And oftentimes business owners can wait too long before they sell their business. And
Mm.
then they lose this the retention of their key employees. And so when they have the power to sell and sell well, sometimes they wait too long and then that business can dissolve. Can you speak more about this?
Sure, yeah. I mean, that's a big rabbit hole, unfortunately. The problem. with business owners is that they're so busy and they're already working 50-hour, 60-hour weeks. So the idea of the idea of working on the business as opposed to in the business, which every owner's heard of this, is daunting. And usually when they do work on the business, it's usually something small. It's usually like, oh, let's look at rebranding. Let's change the colors on our logo. Let's I don't know, let's change our service model and add this tweak or whatever. I'm not talking about that. Those things are important, of course. But I think that one of my big missions is trying to educate owners and bring awareness to the the huge need for owners and entrepreneurs to implement what I call business transition planning. I don't even like to use the phrase exit planning because right off the bat, if you tell an owner that you help people with exit planning, they're immediately going to think, okay, well, I don't need that now. I'm
Well,
gonna do
you've
that
cut them
later.
out of the picture. You've exited them.
That's right. That's another
Yeah.
problem, sure, because they
Yeah.
think, well, I don't want to, this is my baby, I don't want to be a part of this. But every owner knows that they want to quit someday. Now, there are some exceptions that are like, I'm going to work forever. I'm going to die at my desk. And I don't think that their spouses or their kids probably want that to be the case. But let's just ignore those people though. They do exist. But I think that for most people, they know that they want to do something else, maybe not sell and sit around on their butts all day, but they want to do something else, dial it back, um, and they just don't do the planning. They put it off, put it off, put it off, which is why 80% of businesses don't sell. They dissolve, as you put it. So I think that bringing awareness to the people that to owners that they need to do planning now, even if they're going to, whether they're selling in 3 years or 13 years or 30 years, doing the kind of planning that de-risks. You mentioned employees leaving, making sure that the right people are on the bus in the right seats. If you get close to selling, when you're doing that plan that last 2 to 3 years, making sure there's incentive bonuses in place, golden handcuffs, things like that. So, I mean, but like I said, it's a rabbit hole. So, I mean, it goes deep in terms of all the things you need to do to prepare the company for sale. Understanding that if you do that 10 years before you're ready to sell, what's so interesting about that is you're actually going to grow exponentially. You're going to have more efficiency in your company. You're going to have happier employees. The business is going to require less of your time. You're going to have more work-life balance. And at the end of the day, the company will be worth more. And all because you did some planning earlier than you thought, because somebody who said exit planning transitioned that phrase into business transition planning, transitioning your business from wherever it is today to where you want to be, and typically what owners want is to be at a place of higher profitability, more work-life balance, the business not depending on them, customer concentration, good staff, good culture. So I digress.
Yeah, I think it's lovely. I remember when I worked as a commercial real estate broker before, my prior career, there was a female owner of a business, and she had built it up into the millions of dollars in terms of the cash flow, the net income, but she did have that solid team in place of her key employees. So when she
Tough.
sold, it was very attractive to buyers.
There you go. Seamless,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
yeah. I want to thank you for speaking into that. I want to bring up another point that you've made that I think is valuable to the listeners, which is that sometimes business owners, as well as career executives, can fall behind, whether it's consumer debt and or taxes, whether it's quarterly filings, etc. Say more, because I think a part of it is the busyness, but I think another part of it is we don't realize the penalties.
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of like, I mean, it's kind of like the people that don't start their 401k contributions until their mid 30s. As soon as you get out of college or out of high school and you start working, if you don't start paying yourself right away, the longer you wait, I feel like the harder it is to start, because you get so used to that income and you get so used to the money. And then, so for business owners specifically, um, realtors, this happens a lot with, as you mentioned, you some people aren't educated on the fact that you got to pay payroll tax, your 941s, you got to file them. And when you don't have a bookkeeper, a payroll company doing it for you, now you have to do it yourself. And is it difficult? I don't know. I would say it's simple, but it's not easy. But you've got other things to do with your life. So I believe in hiring other people to do those things for me, so I don't have to worry about them. But I guess my point is as you start a business, whether it be a real estate agency or otherwise, and you're kind of bootstrapping it and doing everything on your own, and you start making some money, it feels good to make that money. Now, whether you need it all or you just don't know any better because you're not literally ignorant in a bad way, but like you don't know, you're not aware of all these other things you need to be doing. It's obviously a problem. So if you're starting your business and you don't need all the money, but you're doing really well, then I think you just need to hire the right people to take care of this stuff for you. But if you're somebody who knows what you need to be doing, but you're ignoring it, just know that the IRS does not like people who don't pay their payroll tax. They don't like it when you pay income tax, when you don't pay your income tax, but they really don't like it when you don't pay your payroll tax. So, um, my advice there is just, I mean, if you're a realtor, your time is best spent seeing people, talking to people, showing houses, and you shouldn't be doing payroll. That's my opinion. I mean, hire a payroll person to do payroll, but I think that you have to start by paying yourself first. You got to put that money aside before you put money aside for 401k. You got to put money aside for taxes. Unfortunately, that's how it goes.
Yeah. There's that joke about death and taxes right next to the
Oh,
Egyptian goat
jeez.
man. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So, just to recap for a moment, I thought the first really good key point for today is the business transition planning. The second is what you just spoke of regarding consumer debt, as well as the quarterly tax filing, staying on top of that. Then I thought the third key point for listeners that is just really rich is this idea of a My Promise kit. And I know
Mm,
the origin story came from your brother, but it was a way to organize both offline and online that if something needs to be found quickly, it's there. Say more,
yeah. Yeah, that was I don't know if you want me to share the story about that, but that's a big piece of it. My
please.
brother was divorced for 2 years. He had full custody of all four of his kids. One of them's autistic, and he was a couple hours north of me in Cleveland, Ohio. And just one night, the stars aligned. Ironically enough, it was the 19th, so it was just 3 days ago, 7 years ago, 3 days ago, that he decided to go home a little bit earlier than normal from a friend's house. Hot, humid night, and he got on his motorcycle and he fell asleep and just drove off the road, and he was killed instantly. And what that taught me financially is obviously it was terrible, but you lose your only brother, 13 months younger. We were very close. But what it taught me was that even though I had a will, healthcare directive, powers of attorney, guardianship provisions for the kids, testamentary trust, living trust, like I had all these things, and here I am in this business. I think I'm a rock star. Truth be told, maybe 30% of the way there if I were to kick the bucket. So after going up to Cleveland and kind of putting the pieces back together, um, I couldn't find a password to his laptop, couldn't pay his bills, couldn't find his life insurance, couldn't find the deed to his house, couldn't find the titles to his cars. When we finally found the life insurance statement, he hadn't told anybody, but he'd just been laid off 2 weeks prior. So he had no life insurance for his kids. He had a very, very small 401k, equity in his house, but who wants to sell their house that the kids are being raised in? So again, long story short here, I came back and I told my wife, I promise you will never have to go through what I went through with my brother. And I started building this kit for us, for our family, where basically it's a fireproof safe. Although we call the red files are in the front. That's where your healthcare directive, powers of attorney, medical history, surgical history, prescription drug list goes. That's also goes on a USB ice key. In fact, I've got one sitting right here for the camera. So I don't know if you can see that, but that goes on your keychain. So if you're ever out of state in an auto accident, anything like that, you've got it on you. For first responders, nothing on that's personally identifiable. So even if you lose your keys, you can't have your identity stolen. That's a concern that some people bring up, but it's not a concern. And then from there, the rest of the kit is, all the things you might imagine: a password organizer, a place to put your passports, place for brokerage statements, bank statements, insurance policies, everything in your financial life, your financial house goes in this kit. And then we upload it to what we call the My Promise Vault online. And whenever the estate plan is finished or revised with new clients, what we'll do is we'll set up a Zoom call or an in-person meeting with their executor or trustee. This is the person that would help should one or both of them pass. And then we give them limited access so that they might see, Angelina, address, phone, email. That's all they see when they log in. But heaven forbid we get a phone call from somebody, your trustee or executor saying, "Hey, I've got terrible news. Something happened to Angelina. We lost her. We need your help." We flip the switch, and now we have 24/7 online access to everything in that kit in your financial house at a time when the last thing people want to worry about is money, right? Paying
Yeah,
bills
yeah.
and stuff. So that's where that all started. And we started during COVID. We built it out for our clients because we thought it was hugely valuable. And what was funny is the most common question we got was, "What are you going to charge for it?" Like, nothing. We're not charging people for it, but it's a really, really cool, meaningful I don't want to call it a product, but it's a really meaningful exercise that people really enjoy going through, and they feel good afterwards. It's
Well, it
another thing
brings
that people procrastinate on.
yeah, it brings them peace of mind. So out of curiosity, did it take 4 or 8 hours? And the reason I'm asking is so if a listener's tuning in and they're thinking, "Oh, can I take this on?" It be simple and easy? Realistically, what was the time frame?
To build it out the first time,
To get all the
or
documents, organized, because really it's
ooh,
just if I think about, like, professional organizers.
that's a good question. I wish Kim were sitting here next to me because she at our office, Kim builds most of these. She's a financial advisor that works with me. The way we do it is we send out a checklist, and it's like, here's the topic, sent date, completed date, and we just check the boxes off. We build out the kit, and we throw it on online as well. For our clients, I would say it takes them typically 2 to 3 months to get it done. But if we were to combine all the time they've actually spent doing it into hours, I bet if you just focused, I bet you it would take 6 to 8 hours, I bet, to find everything. Just depends on how organized you are to begin with, I suppose. Some people, they've already got some sort of organization, whereas others might have to download things from the internet and find them because they have no idea where they are.
Yeah, listen, I think it's brilliant. I think that's why I wanted to bring it up as a third key point. In fact, Celine Dion, she's a Canadian singer. Before
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
her husband Rene passed,
Mhm.
he made sure everything was in order, so it would be easy for her. And I thought that was just just wise and
Awesome.
kind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't hear
and
that a lot. You hear the opposite a lot. Prince dying with no will, things like that.
yeah. Well, Celine Dion's husband was a businessman.
Yes, he was very successful. Yeah.
Okay, well, I like the idea very much of the My Promise Kit, so thank you for sharing that. Since
You're
this is a
welcome.
Design Your Legacy podcast, what does this word legacy mean personally to you?
Ooh, okay. Legacy. So what's funny, actually, I'll share a secret with you. When I changed the firm, the name of our company used to be Koós Wealth Management, which is my last name. And as it got too big for me, in other words, it became bigger than me, and we were hiring other advisors, and we didn't want people to have to figure out how to pronounce my last name. So we thought we want to give it an agnostic name. I decided to name it Libertas because it's Latin for liberty, freedom, and independence. But the secret is, I really wanted to name it Legacy Wealth Management because that word means a lot to me. And it really says a lot about what we do for people all day long, every day. But of course, there are a lot of legacy financial planning, legacy wealth management there, and there wasn't even a URL I could buy. So the secret is, I love the word; it means a lot to me. But I did want to name my company Legacy, but it just didn't make sense. But if I were to, I don't know, if I were to simmer it down or go a little bit more into detail, I would say that I would describe it in its importance in three ways, I guess. Um, the first, I guess, would be retirement planning. You're managing we're managing assets for doing financial planning for and ensuring both spouses, if in the case of a married couple, or if they're not married, it doesn't matter, I suppose, continue living and keeping work optional. So if you're not retired yet, we want to make work optional someday. And if you're already retired, we want to keep it that way. We want to, one of the other quotes that I love to repeat that I learned very, very early on in my career was that money is a unit of choice. And the more units we have, the more choices we have. And it's so true. So that would be the first thing, retirement planning. The second thing would be, and I know that they're going to sound similar, but financial planning would be the second. And I would say this is where we're passing, we're not worried so much about providing income for both spouses and making money last. Now we're changing gears and we're saying, okay, how do we move money from this generation to the next and create a legacy, for and be a good steward of our money. And so I would say that would be the second piece. And then the last piece, just to change gears just a tad, and I know we've talked about business owners a little bit, but it's different. It's with business owners. It's not like you're retiring and you're passing money to your family, but you are kind of, if your business, your employees are like family, your culture, it's like a changing of the guard. And I think most owners, one of the reasons they don't want to sell or even think about selling is they can't imagine their baby being taken care of by somebody else, right? So I think it's this changing the guard, it's changing leadership, vision. Um, their employees are going to rely on somebody else going forward. Culture, is the quality of the service or product being sold going to be the same? So I think that building a legacy with your business so that it remains on far past your retirement date and maybe far past, beyond when you're even alive, is important to a lot of people.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for speaking, and that's a well thought out answer in the depth. So
Yeah.
thank you. I again, I I'm going to bring up this phrase called positive role models. I think the more that someone like yourself can speak into it, the more it gives permission for other people to speak into it, especially since 80% of the listening audience are male. So
Oh,
thank
wow.
you.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. What would
Interesting
you like?
stat.
Yeah. What would you like your holistic legacy to be in terms of a vision?
My holistic legacy. I guess when I'm done with my career someday down the road and maybe just gone from this earth, I want I want people to remember me as somebody who s- sought out to save people from bad advice, and that the people that were in my circle, whether that be clients, friends, family, that I was a protector, that like I was there to help protect them from the things that I understand. Being in this case, finance, financial planning, wealth management. Um, so that'll be the first thing, I guess, and I guess the way I would do that is through education. That's why I'm on this podcast with you right now. Which again, thank you again for allowing me to be a guest. But spreading the word, spreading education, authentic education out there, and having integrity. We talked a lot about stewardship today, so I guess that would be another piece. Um, I guess another thing would you talk about mentorship. Um, I've always been somebody who would literally seek out the assistance and help and coaching and mentorship of people in my business who are way more successful than I am, and I would just bother them till they gave me their ear. So I have a lot of mentors, and I'm happy to give the shirt off my back to help others, like others have given theirs off to me. I think that being innovative, seeking out education yourself, understanding not everybody. I shouldn't say nobody. Not everybody's just going to hand it to you and give it to you. You can't sit around and wait for it to show up. I think you have to seek it out. So yeah, and then we're living in a world post COVID where there's this song lyric to a song that I love, and the lyric goes, "Everyone's connected, but no one is connecting." And I think that's so true today. And so I think that again, that goes back to education, but just connecting with people, being a sounding board, and on occasion giving advice away for free. Doing some pro bono work for the public so that we can keep spreading that good, authentic word.
Yeah, making a little bit of a deposit, even energetically, to service to others. That's brilliant. Thank you so much. And it sounds
Yeah.
like, in terms of 3 to 4 core values, you would be leading with stewardship, education, mentorship, innovation. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, you just took the words out of my mouth. I was just thinking as soon as you said that, I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I'm going to say that, give you the same answer to the last question. But yeah, I mean, when I think legacy, I think a legacy of innovation, of being excellent, or at least seeking excellence. I was just talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking. I can't remember what we were talking about specifically, but he says, I'm in my business. What I want to do is I want to be, and he started to say perfect, but then he stopped, and I said, you want to seek perfection. I'm like, he's right. I want to seek perfection because nobody's perfect, but there's nothing wrong with constantly trying to seek perfection. So I would think a legacy of seeking perfection would be something else I would say. But building a legacy of being approachable and, encouraging personal connection. And you mentioned earlier, you said, some people might feel, oh, this is a stupid question. I know the cliche is there's no stupid question. Obviously, some people disagree, but in this world, I mean, nobody takes finance classes in high school, and in most colleges, they don't even force you to take a finance class. So I really do feel like if you're not asking the question, then you're probably missing out. So I think you need to be um, shameless and vulnerable and ask the questions, because if you're sitting in front of a fiduciary, 99 times out of 100, they're going to be enthusiastically excited about helping you and answering that question. So you just got to ask. But yeah, I would say that's it.
That's thank you very much. That's a wonderful answer, and I always want the guests to speak into their values because I think it inspires other people, and especially if somebody leads with values. Because I think sometimes we live in a world today where the question comes up of what do you really stand for, and we look around for evidence of that. And
Yeah.
so I think the more we can talk about values, the more real that they can be, especially when it comes to that business principle of backwards planning. So I have a couple minutes left with you. If you were to
Yeah.
set aside a weekend or two a month in the next year to design a hardcover coffee table book, what would fill its pages?
Well, I think first of all, knowing as analytical as I am, it'd probably take me 12 weekends to do it, not two. But I would. What would fill the book? What would be the chapters? I don't know. I guess for me, it'd be a big part of it would be my personal journey. It would include the story I told earlier about starting, at a very very young age, where you're green. People don't necessarily trust you as much because you don't have as much experience. And so it'd be a lot about my personal journey, mistakes I've made, being very forthcoming and honest about, here's what I learned from these mistakes and how I fix things. Um, I would say it'd be about building my own legacy. I mentioned earlier, I've got a couple companies that I run, and it's really, really important to me that we continue building a culture that is boutique and what I like to call big enough to matter, but small enough to care. So I would say that would be something I'd want to continue when I'm long gone. I think another piece of it is this a chapter would be the fact that retirement's not just science, it's art. There is no such thing as certainty in this world. It's all probabilities. So I think we have to be careful to understand that. And then I don't know. I guess another thing that comes to mind would be something we do for our clients when they get to their 60s and 70s is we offer them this thing. It's a company called Life Bio, where they'll either get a questionnaire that's 74 questions long with everything, questions about their childhood, high school, college if they went, how they met their spouse, if they had military involvement, everything about their life and, job changes, having kids and losses in life. Or they can be interviewed a few times. In either case, it's the same. And then when they're done, they can submit up to 50 images. And we do this for no other reason than personally, my dad is from Hungary, and when his mom, my grandmother, was kind of heading downhill from a health standpoint, I really wanted to get her story because I don't know what the statistic is. I can make one up for you if you'd like, but I don't know what the statistic is, but I know that a lot of stories of our parents and grandparents get lost one generation down. What, 80-90% of the stories are gone. We just forget them. We were never told. So we do this thing called Life Bio for our clients once they hit their 60s and 70s, at least as an option, so that they can have a hard copy book of their life story to pass on to their kids. Because life's not, obviously, we're talking about retirement planning, exit planning, business transition planning today, but this money isn't worth anything unless we're doing something with it or for someone, right? So
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Well, let me just close out our podcast episode today by thanking you very much for your time. This podcast now ranks in the top 5% because of wonderful guests like yourself.
Wow.
And I just wanted to highlight the time value of money that you spoke about, having a destination in mind, not just when you're driving across the country, as well as money is a unit of choice. So for anyone listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or SoundCloud, please remember to rate and review, share with your family and friends. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Thank you, Adam, for speaking into your legacy.
Thank you so much.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. To complete our free business valuation quiz or to set up an introduction call, just head over to elevateandexit.com. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, financial, tax, or as a basis for investment decisions. Always consult a professional business transition planning consultant or a certified exit planning advisor before implementing any of the ideas shared in this episode.